When I think of all rounders, there are few people that come to my mind: Sean Pollock, Yuvraj Singh, Andrew Flintoff, and Vivek Atre. This episode is my conversation with Mr. Vivek Atre, who knows a lot of things, and I believe this 1 hour episode is not even 1% of his wisdom. In this episode, we talked about things like instant gratification, meditation, and finding success within, which also happens to be the title of his latest book. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channel and let us know your thoughts in the comment box. Thank you. Right. So for this podcast, I'll cut right to the chase. You're someone who has, I think, cracked the code of learning how to learn. Because as I told you, I have, when I think of jack of all trades, master of none. But then for you, I'll rephrase it as jack of all trades and master of all as well. So I want to know if you can, tell me and everyone who's going to listen to this podcast, what is your, thought process of learning how to learn?
Yeah, it's a good question, and thank you for inviting me for this conversation. I think learning how to learn is a difficult task because people are firstly reluctant. They think at a point of life that I know everything there is to know about this subject, but there is always something to learn. Nobody can be perfect. And when you say jack of all trades, not really all trades, but some trades, yes. And being perfect in any of them is also tough. Okay. So mastering anything is tougher than taking on new things. So I can take on two new things. For example, I learned French.
Right.
And I have a diploma in it. Mm-hmm. But I'm by no means anywhere where I should be to talk to a French person in a conversation. I can say a few sentences.
Right.
So I think there are certain things where I am reasonably good and other things where I'm just a beginner.
Right. But I think you are good at a lot of things that do matter to a lot of people. So you were saying that a lot of people are reluctant to learn things because they think they've mastered it, or they know everything. My question to you is: do you also rethink your ideas and rethink your perceptions, and do they change over the years?
They do. See, things are some things are basic,
okay,
right? The truth is one.
You basic as in like change, as economics, basic of change. Economics, sciences and all.
Yeah. They don't change.
They don't, yes.
But there are phenomena which change, experiences change, technology changes, and our reactions to them change.
Okay.
People's thinking changes over the years. Mm-hmm. So I think something which was acceptable 10 years ago may not be acceptable today. Vice versa. There are things which are acceptable today which were not acceptable then.
Right.
So I think one has to adapt. Alvin Toffler, I think it was, who said the ability to learn, unlearn and relearn is vital.
Absolutely.
So I like to follow that.
Right. So is there anything that you have unlearned over the years? Because I think a lot of people underestimate, and it has become a trend now of unlearning, but people also miss out on relearning because they think they have already mastered it. But what have you unlearned over the years?
So I think it's a process, and I have got rid of a few things, if I can say so. I think anger management is one thing I've learned. Right. So I've got rid of anger.
Okay.
And being a Scorpio by birth, people used to say, no, Scorpios are all angry people. Okay. But I think I used to be reaction used to be a little hot-headed.
Okay.
And then by 2 minutes I was fine. But even that I've got over. So I've unlearned getting angry.
Okay.
But then everyone has some chinks in the armor, right?
Right.
And if you realize them, understand them, then you work on them, you can improve. I think I've improved as a person. Okay. That's important.
So I'm going to make an observation about you. You are someone who communicates very non-violently and very inclusively. Is this something you consciously put effort on, or does it has it become second nature to you?
I think it's become second nature, luckily for me. Okay. I asked somebody when I got my most important assignment in the government was Deputy Commissioner, right? Okay. DC, Panchkula. He's a good friend. I said, so how should I go about this?
Right.
He said, just be yourself. Okay. Now, I could not get better advice than that.
Okay.
When you're being yourself, whatever you're doing comes involuntarily as a reflex. So I think I am what you see here right now, and this is how I want to be even otherwise. So when I'm speaking from the heart or communicating, as you said, from the heart, I don't need any pretenses.
Okay, so you like the advice that you had was be yourself. And if I ask you who are you, and when I ask what are the factors you talk about, because if someone asks me, I think I'll address my name later. I'll talk about my values. So who are you?
So I think every human being is a conglomerate of so many things.
Absolutely.
I am a conglomerate as well.
Of what?
Of love, hate, fear, stability, confidence, charm.
Okay.
Sometimes being ungainly, sometimes being rash, sometimes being calm, balanced.
Right.
So I think we are complex organisms. Our minds are the most complex.
Right.
And minds, when we start controlling our emotions and reactions and the mind, life gets better. And that comes from seeing the bigger picture of life. Why are we here? What are we doing? Why am I doing this? Am I giving some inspiration to someone out of what I do? And that's what I do for a living now. So I think when you understand yourself a little better, you get better.
So, from your answer, I can judge one thing, that you're very emotionally intelligent. You have a very high EQ, and this is something I've been telling to a lot of people, that probably your IQ can get you, let's say in the corporate, your IQ can get you till the door of a company. But if you want to, climb the ladder, you need to have a good EQ. So is this also something that you do consciously, or has it also become second nature to you now?
No, it is definitely a conscious effort that I made over the years. And why this happened was, it's a little deep.
Right.
So I started a spiritual journey around 2008,
Okay.
12 years or 13 years ago. I started meditating, then there's introspection is involved.
Right.
So then you understand yourself a little better. So you kind of work on yourself, like you said, consciously. So I worked on myself and I analyzed myself at times. But then it does become second nature. And when it becomes second nature, then that means you're not having to make an effort. And you will be like that in all situations.
Right.
So there is an affirmation which I follow Paramahansa Yogananda, the author of the autobiography of a yogi. So he says, I will handle all challenges with even-mindedness. Basically, this is what he means. And in the face of all situations, all circumstances. Now, circumstances vary, difficulties come, human beings react and respond, but no two people react the same way. So
Yes.
I want to be one of the best in handling pressures or challenges. And not that I'm competing with anyone, but emotional intelligence definitely helps me to understand that. I speak on emotional intelligence. I have a lot of talks on that. I have a TEDx talk on this also.
Right.
So when you say that I have a high EQ, I take it as a very strong compliment.
Okay.
So and somebody who is asking me that also has a high EQ. That's why.
Thank you. So something that you told, that there are a lot of different situations, and I believe in the adverse situations, that's your test of your compassion, your empathy, your emotional intelligence, right? So how does and also the way you communicate, because in favorable conditions you can communicate all you want, like you can communicate non-violently, you can communicate with compassion, coming out of compassion. But when you face adverse situations, how do you still stay relevant, still stay emotionally intelligent, make sure whatever you do is in compliance with your values?
Yeah, so to make this more interesting, I'll tell you where I had to really surrender.
Okay.
And
Surrender to what?
Surrender to
Universe?
the Almighty, or
Right.
to I had no control over that situation.
Okay.
You're talking about that, how you react, respond. So I was we went for a trip to Europe, and my wife wanted to go parasailing and all, and she's very adventurous. And I was, no, I don't want to do this. So 90 feet or 120 feet up in the air,
Okay.
just the two of us hanging on, and we are like, we're like up there in the air.
Okay.
And I'm feeling scared, and the water is below, and I know that I can do nothing. So for the
Right.
first 2 or 3 minutes I was terrified. But then I mentally let go and surrendered
Okay.
that I have no control over this, so let me accept what is happening. And acceptance is the best at this point of time. Then things became better for me, and I lived through it. So the toughest of circumstances, as you say, at times you can do something about them, at times you can't.
Right.
Faith, understanding, and knowing that this will be over by tomorrow or by tonight. And when the saint said that the darkest of nights vanish when the light comes,
Right.
as if they'd never been there.
Okay.
So you have to think like that.
Right. So coming back to what we are talking about, learning how to learn. I believe my generation does not requires a lot of gratification, like immediate gratification. And I believe if you have to learn something and get better at it, you need to be in the game of delayed gratification, right? And this is something I've asked a lot of people on the podcast, because I believe you get to be at a position, you get to be at a position where you can impact a lot of people by being in the game of delayed gratification. So I want to ask you, do you are you in the game of delayed gratification? If yes, how do you make sure that you're not tempted by the instant gratification thing?
Yeah, so everyone is human, right? Everyone has desires, temptations, and you're right, this is an era of instant gratification. So the moment I'm free, I will be tempted to log into Instagram.
Okay.
And I'll live half of my life there. If I'm a youngster, more than half.
Yes.
So the point is that we're all human, but when you say game of delayed gratification, it's actually a quest.
Okay.
So you kind of try to be stable, calm, and patient. Then you're not into these quick gains. And you understand that when you learn, like for example, we were discussing, when you read a book,
Okay.
you read a book not for some exam which is taking place just after 1 hour, but because this book will help you, or you love it, or whatever it is. And that book may help you in the exam of life, or it may help you in an interview 2 years later.
Right. You never know.
That is delay. Absolutely, you never know. Delayed gratification. But you learn this trick of waiting by being a little conscious of the fact that life doesn't always give the results that you want. You have to invest. What else do you have to invest apart from learning? You have to invest goodness.
Okay.
You help people not out of any agenda, but because you want to help them. But the universe then conspires to help you. So 10 years down the line, you meet someone, sir, you had helped me that day, I'd come to your office.
Okay.
Now, sir, can I do something for you? You're standing at an airport looking around, the guy is working there, he helps you. So that's how delayed gratification comes, when you're not looking for gratification.
I think when you help someone out of expecting, like this expectation that this person is going to help me, sometime in the future, do you think it defeats the purpose of, not expecting anything in return, but also in the back of your head, if you're probably helping someone, you think that, okay, what if this person may help me in the future? What do you think?
I think so. It's human though. When you meet someone who might help you in future to get a job, or is important to you, you will be more deferential towards it. You will look after that person more.
Biased?
Yeah, you will be biased.
Okay.
And that's human. There's no harm in it. But when you're also a do-gooder, generally, you are generally helpful to people.
Okay.
You are generally receptive and a good listener. You don't belittle people who are, let's say, not as well off or intelligent or educated.
Not as privileged as
Not as privileged. So I often say that a girl and boy who are dating, or who want to, parents tell them, you go out and see whether you like each other. What should the girl look for in the boy, and what should the boy also look for in the girl? How that boy talks to the waiters.
Okay.
And how he talks to the auto rickshaw or the car or the taxi driver. Because there if he's throwing his weight around and being pompous, that means that he's being kind to her or nice to her, but not really genuinely with people. So being a do-gooder and being receptive and being gentle is something that will help you a lot.
Right. So do you know, it is my pet peeve. I get very irritated, more irritated than usual when people don't really, talk nicely to waiters, or anyone who helps us, be it a person who drives our car, or be it a person who cooks for us. And I think a lot of people do that to feel good about themselves. When you belittle someone, it subconsciously it puts you on a kind of a pedestal. I think that's I think that's
it's a tendency, and some communities or some regions do it. In our North India, it's a lot.
Yes.
And that cat's whisker, the collar's up, and you want to belittle someone, or you want to be seen as being somebody high and mighty. It's a very temporary thing.
Okay.
It doesn't help. There was this. I was looking at a video. And there was this saint kind of person, or rustic kind of person rather. He's talking about the fact that when we sit in a car at the back and the driver's driving, and you're an officer in charge and control, you sit like this very, arrogantly, and then you think that you're on top of the world.
Okay.
But he says it's all mitti. He says it's going to vanish. He says you are also mitti, the car is also mitti.
Yes.
So don't take yourself too seriously there, and don't belittle others. Realize that you could have been in his place,
Absolutely.
or tomorrow you could be in his place, or he could be in your place. So be kind to people generally.
So, sir, when you're talking about the delayed gratification thing, I think I had this back of my head, that you want to do good things and then patiently not wait for the result, like not attaching myself to a concrete goal, but attaching myself to a purpose. And I think I was reading this book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a boring book, but
I've heard of it.
it is, I think, if I can recommend only one book to a person, that would be Thinking Fast and Slow, right? So I used to get very bored, and there were times when I would just read one page of the book, but then I eventually realized that this book is going to help me probably in the future, may or may not help me, but it will obviously teach me a lot of things. And that is when I thought of how do I embrace boredom. And again, this is something my generation does not have. They need entertainment all the time. Even when a person goes to a washroom, they take their phone because they cannot be bored, right? And I believe, sir, your generation I think was the last generation that could embrace boredom, right? So what are your thoughts on this?
I think that book is by Daniel Kahneman, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I've read it, I've seen it. The point is that, and I like the way you say that our generation, then you said my generation, because you realize that we are from different generations. The point is that sometimes you do things because you have to do them, and you accept that.
Okay.
You cannot treat it as drudgery. That, I'm going to hate every minute of this because I'm bored, I don't want to do this, and it's not giving me any immediate gratification. I don't think life is that. So you have to invest.
Okay.
When you're investing hard work and labor, then it's going to reap your results sometime. So I think you need to at times accept that all times cannot be exciting, and you can't love everything that you do. You do things patiently, wait for the moment when you're going to have a party, or you're going to play cricket, or do something like that. But you go through that drudgery, that boredom. I think my generation, as you say, may have been among the last ones, but I think every generation there's nothing drastic. It's all gradual.
Absolutely.
So generation beyond yours will also be gradually different.
Yes.
Nothing is black and white. So I think there would be people in every generation who have the traits of the previous generation and the next generation.
Yes.
And they're not like their own generation even at that time.
Okay. Sir, so when you were talking about, you put effort into something, you invest into something, and then eventually you will, reach somewhere. You will, get results, whatever you were expecting. And I want to, here get into this topic of your book, which is, Finding Success Within. And I'll tell you my interpretation of the title before I knew what is in it. So I think when I first read Finding Success Within, I thought, okay, this must be something that you create your own measure of success, right? And then you don't compare yourself with others. You want to be better than yourself, right? So what's your opinion on this? Do you think?
Yes.
Do you think we should compare ourselves with each other in terms of success, or do you think we should have our own measure of success?
No, I think you're right actually in a way. This is what I mean, but the meaning is a little wider.
Yes.
So one of the things is definitely that your success comes from how you feel.
Okay.
If you feel good about your life, about your work, about whatever you're doing, you're successful.
Okay.
Basically, it doesn't matter what Tom, Dick and Harry thinks.
Yes.
Whether you have X amount of money, X amount of power, or X amount of fame, can't even be quantified. So if you're feeling good about your life and peaceful within, that's what my meaning is. But when you rightly say that comparing yourself with others actually is the worst possible thing you can do.
Okay.
So my car is smaller than his car, or my salary is less than his salary. This is the bane of our lives. This is the pain of our lives.
Absolutely.
So we will keep thinking about this. that person is more good looking, that person is more wealthy, that person is more happy looking, he's gone to Monte Carlo for a vacation, I've been only to Goa. So if I start thinking like this, then I'm going to never end my unhappiness, and this leads to unhappiness, leads to failure, because you will never be a success then.
Right.
Success is a journey.
Okay.
And if you're feeling every day good about your life, you wake up with energy, you think that you want to do something today which you haven't done yesterday,
Okay.
we want to add value to people's lives, then you're successful. So that's what I talk about in this book.
So when you mean success, do you mean chasing an outcome, or do you mean something that has to do with a bigger purpose?
Yeah, so I mean the bigger purpose, definitely, because the bigger purpose of life is to actually find happiness.
Okay.
Happiness is something which comes from within.
Okay.
Success without happiness. Let's take the richest man in the world. I mean, right now is Jeff Bezos, right?
Okay.
Jeff Bezos got separated.
Yes.
So there is something missing in his life. So there is nothing directly correlating money, power, and fame with happiness. So when I talk about this, I mean that we are basically in a journey of our own. We need to leave this world a better place than we brought it when we were brought in. And we need to find happiness in the last moment of. So the spiritual thing is that when you are leaving the world, how you feel about your life at that time is how your result is going to be.
Okay.
So if I feel that I've led a life of cheerfulness, balance, helping others, respect, then I'm going to retain those forever. Power will come and go. Money will not really help me at that time. So I think I need to realize what is important. That's most important.
What is your relationship with money, and do you does it have anything to add to your success?
So it's not very high on my priority.
Okay.
I've always, as an IAS officer also, I really wanted to earn acclaim,
Okay.
goodwill,
Right.
and people saying that, okay, this person, he gave his best,
Okay.
which fortunately I did, and fortunately I do even now.
Okay.
So the point being that money is something which is important. You need to be comfortable, and you need to not be thinking about money. Where is my money coming from? Once you are like that, then you can do creative things.
Okay.
You can only be creative if your basics are okay.
A sense of security.
Exactly. So if I'm worried about where my next meal is coming from, or even if I'm too much into money, as in my shares have fallen, my shares have gone up, so I'm like, today I'm feeling low, today or tomorrow. So I'm reacting too much to money all the time. I would say money is much below family, career satisfaction, creativity, health, meditation, spirituality. Money comes fifth or sixth or seventh or eighth in the priority.
So how do you meditate? Because I know everyone has a very different way of meditating. I was talking to one of my friends yesterday, and then he says, meditation for me is listening to music. It clears my head. I can think of the unthinkable. So what is the term meditation for you?
Yeah, I agree with your friend. Whatever gives you calmness of mind is meditation in a way. But meditation technically is defined as concentration on God.
Okay.
But when somebody is into music,
Right.
somebody's batting, like Pujara, we say Pujara cannot be ruffled. He may be got out, but you can't ruffle his concentration.
Yes.
So Pujara, while batting, is meditating in a way.
Okay.
Because his focus is only on the object, that is the ball.
Yes.
When you are meditating, when I meditate morning and evening, today also I meditated for an hour. So when I'm sitting and meditating, concentrating on my, what we call the spiritual eye in our case, we're meditating, concentrating on God. Our thoughts come here and there.
Okay.
You try and remove them and bring them back. You do some meditation techniques. But if someone is enjoying his music, writing, cricket, work, and finding meditative peace in that,
Okay.
I have no problem, and I encourage that. However, the highest goal would be to meditate and find your true self. And for that, you have to get into some detailed meditation. And at some stage of life, in fact, earlier the better, you should start meditating.
So what would be your advice to person who has not even gotten into meditation, but know, about meditation in bits and pieces?
So firstly, the benefits of meditation, I can tell you that first we need to know why we have to meditate.
Okay.
The first thing is that you handle life's challenges better. Your mind becomes calmer. When your mind is calmer, your physical health is better,
Okay.
and your spiritual and mental health is better.
Right.
Your anger management is better. People around you are happier because you are calmer from within. That's the benefit of meditation.
Mhm.
The higher benefit of meditation is to find your true self, which is
Okay.
self-realization, which we don't get into too much in detail. But basically, that is the high. But the minimum benefit and the way to meditate for a newcomer is to probably read a few paths, read a few books. If for 6 months or 1 year you're reading, you will find one of them connects with you better. Find that book, find the path, find the techniques, and there are 5 or 6 glorious paths in this world, which I have studied a little bit.
Okay.
I follow one of them.
Mhm.
And once you discover that path, then follow it loyally,
Okay.
regularly. Don't think that, okay, today I'm going for a flight, so I'm going to miss my meditation.
Mhm.
So then you do your meditation come what may, whatever way.
Yeah, staying at it.
Yeah, stay at it. So effort is what counts.
Okay. How long has it been for you? How long have you been meditating?
About 12 years seriously.
Okay.
Yeah, 12 to 13 years. Before that, I used to try off and on. My wife started 5 years before me.
Okay.
The ladies are always ahead of the men. So she started off.
Setting a good example.
Yeah, yeah. So I always ask her, I always used to tell her, why are you sitting, let's go out, let's do this. She wanted to go to Ranchi, where the ashram of Yogoda Satsang is. I said, why do you want to go to Ranchi? But now I understand. So we don't want to be mad running here and there after people, but you find that moment of joy within. And I understand very well why she meditated before me and why she meditates now. I also meditate. And life is better.
So and it's a personal question if I may.
Go ahead.
How has it impacted your relationship with your wife after you started meditating?
Well, she's much happier with me at least.
Okay. And are you happy with yourself? That's my
I'm
question.
happy with myself. I'm much happier with myself because, see, the thing is that if your paths are too divergent,
Okay.
husband and wife or spouses or in a relationship,
Mhm.
they can be divergent. I mean, you can be a
Okay.
photographer and your wife can be a chartered accountant. It's okay.
Okay.
But somewhere they have to meet also. Interests have to
Yes.
meet.
Yes. Right.
So you have to enjoy some activities together. You have to like visiting the same people, same places.
Mhm.
So while there can be your own space, as they say, in a relationship,
Mhm.
but there has to be common ground. There has to be love. So without that, there's no point. And yes, it can be found.
So what's your age now?
54.
54. So you started meditating around 42, right? How was Vivek Atre before, let's say at the age of 41, and how is he right now?
Yeah, so it's not sudden, but I think
Yes, the gradual process, yes.
gradually, I think I became much more calm. So people tell me now, even in office, they used to tell me before I took voluntary retirement.
Okay.
3 years ago, I resigned from the service. So people would say that, how are you so calm? Even at 5:30 in the evening, after a full day at office, or 6, you would say you're sitting calmly. So I would largely be smiling and largely be receptive, and I think it's meditation that has helped me. Before that, I would lose my cool once in a while or be ruffled and disturbed. Minds are distracted and disturbed and irritated. Well, I wasn't an irritated kind of person, but I was definitely less calm than I am now.
Okay.
And calmness helps my body, mind, and soul. So I think I'm much better off.
Right. And so, I want to ask you about when you were serving the government, how the impact of meditation, how was it in you navigating through your professional life?
That's a good question. See, CEOs who meditate,
Okay.
there's a Harvard study. CEOs who meditate are doing much better than those who don't meditate. That's the study.
Mhm.
Now, I would say IAS officers or police officers who meditate will also do better than those who don't meditate. Generally. Of course, there may be somebody who doesn't meditate who's much better than others. That's an exception.
Okay.
So I would say that it helped me. When I was DC, Deputy Commissioner, it was the busiest post possible. And
Okay.
everybody knows it.
Mhm.
24/7 you're on.
Okay.
Somehow I would find time to meditate twice a day.
Okay.
And luckily the phone wouldn't disturb because it was early morning or late evening much. Once in a while it did. But I think I could find that time and it helped me in my work.
Okay.
Another thing I'll add to this, you mentioned jack of all trades in the beginning. I think creativity also helps you in a similar way. So if I am a busy business person,
Okay.
but I also love astronomy.
Okay.
I gaze at the stars at night.
Okay.
So in my work, I'm going to look forward to that evening of stargazing.
Mhm.
And after that stargazing, when I come back to work next morning, I'm more refreshed.
Okay.
So I think it works very well for someone to either meditate or be creative or both.
Okay.
You'll do better in your work also.
I think meditation adds to your creativity a lot. I know artists who meditate, they create greater arts than artists who don't. It's just an observation.
it's
I
true.
don't know.
It's
I'm sure there must be some data to back, but it's just my observation. Artists who meditate, they create very better arts.
Better
That
art.
again, in my perception, I don't know.
think that you're right. It must be. I'm sure Pujara meditates. Even Kohli, though he used to be very Virat Kohli.
Yes.
He also
He
looks
does,
like
he
he's
does.
sobered down and he concentrates on the crease. He meditates. So it helps.
Absolutely. On the pitch, you can see people who don't lose their temper very soon. I think there are people who meditate or are very don't react, but they respond. They are not not instantly react kar diya, but they are they respond. They think
Their
about
emotional
it.
intelligence is higher, as you
Yes.
said earlier.
Higher EQ.
Yeah,
Yes.
where you think before you speak.
Okay. Absolutely. Sir, so what do you also look ahead? If you meditate, do you look forward to it?
So even the saints
Okay.
found it tough to meditate.
Yes, that's why I'm asking you.
It is a compulsion to that extent.
Okay.
So I haven't reached the stage where I am looking forward to meditation as much as I would look forward to eating a hot chocolate fudge,
Okay.
right, or a mango.
Okay.
So I haven't reached that stage. I don't think anyone can.
Are you going towards that?
No, I'm not yet going towards that also. But the point is that one is better than before. So I know that I have to meditate for the next 1 hour. I mean, if I have to in the morning, then I don't look for excuses. I don't look here and there. I don't waste my time. I sit down.
Okay.
When you sit down to meditate, then God starts helping you, because you've done your job. You're doing your job. You're making the effort. So my job is to make the effort, even if I don't find it either superbly attractive.
Okay.
That now I want to meditate. It doesn't seem like that to me yet. But I never find it difficult also. I don't find it to be like, oh no, I have to meditate. It's not like that either. So I'm all right. I guess I'm a little better off and looking forward to it, definitely.
You have a stoic approach towards meditation. Okay, I don't really look forward to it, but it's all I don't suffer while meditating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm slightly better than that.
Right. So what were you doing at the age of 41, professionally?
So I was director of something or the other. Probably I was director of IT in Haryana. I'd come back from Chandigarh. Yeah. So I was doing some IT kind of work and trying to implement e-governance. That was my profession. And I was still playing cricket a little bit or tennis,
Okay.
staying fit. And I had started reading some spiritual books, but not meditating yet.
So how is your productivity at the age of 42 and let's say at the age of 50?
It's better now. So I find that, and one of the compliments that I get from my friends is, how do you do so many things in one day? So I think I prioritize better.
Okay.
So I will not waste, I will walk, I will look at my phone, but I won't really waste time. And then you get more done in the same day. After taking voluntary retirement, another thing that has helped me is I can sleep 1 hour more than I used to.
Okay.
1.5 hours. So that helps me in my productivity throughout the day also. So I am able to do a lot more than I was in one day. Although I was pretty efficient at work. But I think I'm calmer till the end of the day, and that helps you in the quality of your experiences.
Okay.
You've had a busy day at work.
Okay.
You're tired.
Okay.
You're not talking properly to your family. There's no point. You have to spend time with the family, talk properly. So now I don't have that problem. I spend quality time.
I'm going to make a guess now. After you come tired from your job, you are still, because of your meditation, you are still mindful of your time with your family. Right? Is it true?
Yeah. One prioritizes that. One is mindful of it, and one knows that family, because I often tell youngsters who are not yet married that you'll get married, you'll have children, and then the children will grow up very fast.
Okay.
When they're 5, you think they're too little, and suddenly they're 25.
Okay.
So where did those 20 years go? Because you didn't spend them with them as much as you wanted to. and you will want to. So prioritize, spend time. Don't, I mean, in olden times, fathers would come and ask son, how's your padhai going? And the son would say, sir, theek hai, dad, theek hai. And then 1 week later, again he'll ask the same question. That's no conversation.
True.
Carry out conversations with the family. Spend time. Play with them. Walk with them. Watch something with them. Whatever you can.
So now again, I have a personal question. But do you think the relationship of a father, especially in the seeing the societal norms, especially in North India, what do you think is the relationship of a son and a father? And I'll tell you about me. So I was very close to my mom. I am very close to my dad as well. But when we compare, I'm more close to my mom, and my sister is more close to my dad, right? But then after, I think, after going to Nepal, there were a few realizations, and then I started connecting with them more, because I let go all the norms and all the societal constructs I had in my mind, and then now I share a very deep relationship with him, right? So I want to know from a father perspective, how is it, and do you consciously put effort to break those societal norms and break the ice? And because as you said ki one day you asked, okay, how was your exam, or how are your studies, and the next week you'll ask the same thing. So how is it for you from a father perspective?
So I think things have changed for the better in this respect overall in the society. People are closer to the kids than they used to be.
Okay.
And when I was a kid, my father was very loving, but we were not that close to him as such. I was closer to my mom.
Okay.
And even my sisters, normally they're closer to their dads, but he was a busy person, so I think they were also closer to my mom.
Okay.
But my father was so inspiring and loving. So we used to be obviously very fond of him. When I became a dad, I have 2 girls. Now these 2 girls, they are very close to me and my wife also. We are a very close-knit family. I think it's the boys who bring in the problems at times. Although we are all so I personally think that boys sometimes stop communicating a little more. So I think the girls keep communicating, especially with their moms, and that really helps. Boys don't communicate either with their moms or with their dads, and at some stage they cut off, and that becomes a problem. I have studied and I'm a motivational speaker, so I motivate youngsters. So 11th class, 12th class students especially need a lot of talking to and conversations. They withdraw into their shells. Could be girls or boys.
Okay.
But I think relationships should be closer. I have found as a father that my daughters are close to me. I talk to them. If they're not talking or they're quiet, then I try to make them talk. And between us, we have conversations. And I think it's working pretty well.
Right. So I wanted to explore a bit about your creative processes on, how do you write a book. So when you start writing a book, what's your thought process? And I know you're finding success within it's like a self-help book, but you have also written books before that. So what's the genre of those books?
Yeah, so I wrote 2 novels. One was called Move On Bunny.
Yes.
A kind of rom-com and a rom-com.
Like fiction.
Yeah, fiction. Okay. And then Dubeji bounces back. Another young man who bounced back. His nickname was Dubeji.
Okay.
So that was also a funny rom-com. But then I realized, and my publisher also told me, that you're a motivational speaker. You should write a self-help book.
Okay.
It will go with your speaking, and it does. Finding success within certainly goes with that. It's now been translated into Hindi as Safalta Ki Antarik Khoj.
Amazing.
So it's coming out very shortly. So writing these books was one quality you asked me right in the beginning, what are you good at?
Okay.
And I think 2 things I'm pretty good at are speaking and writing.
I think if you're going to talk about what are you good at, I think we should stop the camera and wait for 30 minutes.
No. That's not right. Only 2 things I'm good at. One is writing and one is speaking. Okay. I'm a little good at cricket also. I used to be.
I've seen your video.
Yeah. So speaking and writing. So writing comes naturally to me. I think I make effort, but I don't make as much effort as someone else will make to write a book or a column piece. Like I write a column called Random Forays, which you know about. So I started off writing these stories for my novels. The first one was episodical, about 6 or 8 episodes of his life, a young man's life. The second one was one story from beginning to end, so I matured as a writer.
Okay.
The third one is 52 life skills for young people, which I've been thinking about, which I put together. The fourth one is going to be my column collection, so it's easy for me. I've written 120 of them, and they're going to come in a book.
Okay.
But the fifth one, which I'm going to start, is again going to be a novel, which should be better than my first 2. And so I'm looking forward to it. I love writing. I love reading. I think people should read much more than they read.
Okay.
You mentioned thinking fast, thinking slow. It's great that you've read this book. People don't read books. So if you read, you write, and you speak better.
It's why are there 52 chapters in your book? Why the number 52? Is it because the number of weeks in a month?
Yeah, it says the number of weeks in a year.
Oh,
But I started with 50 in mind.
okay.
Thinking 100 is too much, and 50, cricketers, we like 50s and 100s.
Like a benchmark, okay, फिर half
Benchmark.
century होगी.
Yeah. So 52 turned out to be a good number. I'll tell you another connection. In the Gita, there are a couple of shlokas which say that these 26 qualities human beings should have.
Okay.
Though these 26 qualities are not in my book as such, I may have been inspired by them. But these 26 qualities, if you follow for 52 weeks, that means one you follow for 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yes.
So I think that number 52 is quite significant, and somehow it was coming to 52 anyway. My list was about
Okay.
50 or 52, so I said let's do it.
And so why have you like the sequence of the the skills that you have mentioned? Why that sequence? Is there any
In the life skills, yeah.
Yes.
So I've talked about career skills to start with.
Okay.
Choosing a career, because that's what people are worried about.
Okay.
Their job, their career.
Mhm.
So I've started with that. I've started with things which are more practical. How to handle difficult bosses also is there.
Okay.
How to handle work pressure, how to make a presentation, how to speak in a public place. Then I come to higher things like winning the inner battle,
Okay.
emotional intelligence, creativity, mindfulness, meditation, being a compassionate person. That's how it flows.
Were you a difficult boss before meditating and after meditating?
No, so I wasn't. My thing was always that I should encourage people, but I'm firm.
Okay.
I'm firm. So I shouldn't lose my temper. I say, okay, I want this at 5 o'clock. It means 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean 6 o'clock. So I'm firm. So the biggest compliment I got was a young person like you. He works with me as an intern.
Okay.
And he read my book and he had to read it because he works with me. So,
Okay.
but he comes to me.
Finding
says,
commonality.
he says, sir, I've read your book, but I read only 51 out of the 52 chapters. I said, why is that? He said, because I didn't need to read handling difficult bosses.
Oh, well,
बड़ा
wow.
smart लड़का है.
काफी ज़्यादा smart.
Compliment. He gives me that.
That's very, very smart.
Yeah, very smart
Really
guy.
appreciating that.
Anshuman is his name. Very smart.
I know him.
Yeah.
Right. So, sir, because I know you have very disciplined candor, what is your leadership style?
So it's firmness with encouragement.
Okay.
And as DC or director, or as I am also a CEO of a vibrant forum that we have.
Okay.
So whenever you're leading people, you need to make sure that they understand that you mean business, but you need to encourage them and bring out their creative best,
Okay.
their innovative best. Yeah, I often say in my leadership talks that if people are scared of you and they work for you, that is not as good as if they respect you and they work out of their heart.
Okay.
They want to work with you.
Yes.
They will work much better. But out of terror, if you're making somebody work, their work output won't be much. And then they will get sick of your terror ways. So I think the better way of leadership is to be solid but encouraging. And it is said that there's a quote, be an encourager. The world is full of critics. So I don't criticize much. I encourage people.
Are you a critic of yourself?
Not really. I'm my biggest supporter. In fact, that is something I've been blessed with. So I haven't been a guilty kind of person, or I haven't been a critic of myself either. So I think that that criticism quality, somehow God has not put into me much.
Okay.
So I don't criticize much.
Do you follow-up question, but do you still have to reassure yourself on certain things?
Yeah, certain things, I guess I'm human. So there are certain things I can't do for nuts.
Okay.
I can't cook, and I've just learned how to make coffee, and I'm very happy with that. So I can not dance for my life, but I can sing a little bit. I can speak a little bit. I write a little bit, as you know. I can carry out conversations and do some work. So yeah, I'm not harsh on myself, but I think I know my drawbacks.
Like you're self-aware. And so I think it's your humility talking, but you're really good at whatever you do. And is it something like, let's say your interns or whoever is working with you, do they treat you like a godly figure if yes, how do you make sure you humanize in front of, or like, pedestal पे चढ़ा के रखते हैं नहीं? How is
ये
it?
ना, it's a very interesting question. I think pedestal पे थोड़ा बहुत चढ़ा के रखते भी हैं, and as you grow older, the youngsters, obviously the age gap is a little more.
Okay.
If I was 30 and the intern is 25, there's not much age gap either.
Different dynamic.
So that connection is more, the pedestal is smaller. But as you grow older, but it's not only to do with age. There was a time when I'll just very humbly, I must tell you this. I was about 35 or something, and my PA was a youngster. So I said, Manish, ये करना है, आपने जाना नहीं है इससे पहले. He turned around to me after he was working with me for a year or so. He said, sir, ऐसा है सर, हम आपके फैन हैं. So I was like, what is this? Manish? I was so shocked. So वो pedestal है. But it often kind of comes as a barrier with some people when they want to be friends.
Yes.
वो तो pedestal पे हैं, so you can't even be friends with them.
Right.
So it is like that also at times.
This is something I've asked a lot of people, because कोई जब pedestal पे चढ़ा के रखता है, you don't get real unsugar coated feedback.
Exactly.
So do you make sure that you get real feedback?
Yeah, that is a problem. You have identified it well. There could be times, but then I think my wife makes up for it. She tells me unsugar coated. This is not right. You didn't do it right. Okay. She is pretty balanced. So she'll tell me this. She calls a spade a spade.
Okay. So I have a last few questions, and all of these, not only these, but all the questions that I've asked, ये सब मेरे क्यूरियोसिटी से ही आ रहे हैं. एंड माई पर्सनल ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ दिस पॉडकास्ट इज कि आई वांट टू get answers to a lot of questions, let's say that. So how was your transition from I'm guessing it was a private sector and then government, then public sector and again private. How was your transition?
So I started out being an engineer and a cricketer, and then I got into AppTech for a year or two.
Okay.
Before I got into the government. My father died in service. I got into Haryana service. Then I got into IAS. So that transition was a natural transition because he died and I had to get into the service. When I left the service, it was a conscious, abrupt kind of thing. For 4 years I was thinking, but the decision was obviously... So this transition has been very pleasant.
Okay.
And it seems from outside that, who leaves the IAS and who leaves the government. But I think I left it at the right time. All the advantages of being in the IAS are still with me. Because I call up somebody, they're my friends, I get that respect, it's good. But it depends on how you were in service also. And now I'm more creative, I can flower, I'm sitting with you in an interview, I may have been sitting in a meeting in the secretariat right now.
Right.
And I would have called you up, no, we can't do this interview today because I'm busy. So my life is more my own, and I manage to do the things I love. So that's the best part.
So I have a very interesting question, and this is something I've been trying to find an answer to. This is something I was also talking to Ayush. If let's say I am in service, I am an IAS,
yes,
and then I leave it, right? For some reason I take a voluntary retirement, and then after 2-3 years, let's say I take it because I was not, I wanted something else in my life, right? After 2-3 years, if I think, okay, in hindsight, I should not have left the that position, right? So you get this, that during that time 3 years ago I did what made me happy, right? But then after 3 years I'm regretting that. So what do you think? Should we think about these things? In hindsight, we should have done this, or we could have done this. But then you did that because you were that was the best thing that you could have done.
No, see, these are human situations. So luckily for me, I haven't felt even a tinge of regret even once, 3.5 years down the line. I met a fellow IAS officer who left 10 years only. He did 10 years of service, Kashish Mittal. He's a singer.
Okay.
You should interview him. So he doesn't have any regret and he looks pretty cool. But to leave after 10 years, there will be people who will have regrets.
Okay.
Even I may have had, I don't have, but I may have. And there's so many things you do in life which you do regret. But then if you keep regretting and living in that past, so Paramahansa Yogananda says, fully enjoy the beauty and wonder of each moment.
Okay.
Don't live in the past and the future. The future has not yet come. The past, as one uncle of mine, Mr. V.K. Kapoor, former DGP, he says, the past is a cancelled check. Forget it.
Okay.
So don't live in that regret or that guilt or that what should have been or what could have been or I should have done this. It will come to you. At times your mind doesn't listen to you, but you get over it quickly. You move on to whatever you're doing. Concentration on this moment is the most important success factor. Mindfulness.
Okay.
Thich Nhat Hanh, Paramahansa Yogananda, Eckhart Tolle,
Okay.
all great thinkers, seers, they say the same thing. This moment is a present. The present is a present for you. It's a gift.
Yes. Yes.
Make the full use of it. Don't wallow in the past or the future.
I believe if you are living in regret, you are living in past, and if you are, anxious, then you're living in future. So my last question: what would be and I know one book already, but what would be the 3 books that you would recommend to any youngster in their early 20s right now?
Yeah, I would recommend Yuval Noah Harari. And Harari has written 21 ideas for the 21st century. He's written Sapiens.
I'm reading Sapiens right now.
Yeah, he's written all those. I would recommend him definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I would also recommend Nandan Nilekani. He's written Reimagining India.
Okay.
So if you want to know about India,
Okay.
I'll recommend a couple more than 3. So Sudha Murthy is a great author also to understand India.
I saw your conversation
Interview
with
with Sudha
yes,
Murthy.
yes.
Yeah. Then I would recommend Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi, which you probably guessed, because I think the sooner you read it, the more you understand life better.
My guess was Finding Success Within.
And the last one is Finding Success Within, because I should be humble enough to say that last. And it is last in this list, no doubt. So read Finding Success Within to find why and how we can be successful and happy.
So I know I said last question, but I have one last, final last question. Is there something that you're rethinking or reimagining right now? Because you mentioned reimagining India, and I just had this thought, okay, is there something, any idea of you or any perception that you're probably in the transition phase of, changing or probably rethinking something in your life?
Yeah, it's my motivational speaking career.
Okay.
So I've been at it for many years. I have 8 TEDx talks. I have lots of successes.
Right.
3 million views on my YouTube.
Right.
But I think I can go to the next level.
Okay. What's the next level?
That next level would be to reach out directly to the youth. If it means speaking more in Hindi and regional languages, whatever I know I will. English, definitely I'll continue. Reaching out to focused youth in a quick manner, because there are people who are suffering.
Right.
They're overthinking, they are into depression, they're into sullenness, they're not into creativity. The education system also is like that. So I want to be a crusader for creativity, calmness, balance. These are my happy words. And cheerfulness. So I want to be a crusader for that and do more in this. That's my transition. Or I want to rethink how to become better known, reach out to more people across India.
So thank you so much, and I look forward to more conversations. One thing. Second, your 2 more books. I'm guessing they will release in some time near future.
Yeah.
But I'm looking to whatever any art form you have to share on LinkedIn, on any platform, on YouTube and
Instagram also. I'm pretty active. So
we will also link your social media handles so that people can not only get inspired from this conversation, but I know you have you just type your name. Have you ever Googled yourself? Okay. There's a lot of umpty numbers of videos.
Because I have to see that. I have to check where I am.
Right, sir. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.